Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. InvesTT has been involved in a series of investment promotions during the months of October to November. President Sekou Alleyne, he joins us now to discuss their objectives and outcomes. How are you doing, Mr. Alleyne? Glad to have this convo with you.
I am well. Thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to have the conversation, Dike.
Definitely our pleasure. And in terms of that promotion of investment opportunities in Trinidad and Tobago at international events, what are some of the things that you were looking forward to do in terms of saying, okay, well, these are the areas that we want to cover both geographically as well as points for people to say, yes, I want to be a part of investing in Trinidad and Tobago?
Absolutely. So, Invest Trinidad and Tobago, given its mandate, really wants to focus on those geographies where there are significant outward investment flows happening. North America, obviously, Asia, and, a newer market for us, which is the Middle East. At the same time that we want to target those markets, we want to understand what those investment flows are like and the sectors that they're happening in, the hot emerging sectors, as well as the workhorse sectors that see investment flows happening on a regular basis. And InvesTT always wants to partner with or align the sectors it believes Trinidad and Tobago has a competitive advantage in with those investment flows that are coming not just into Latin America and the Caribbean, but that are moving globally. And so basically, our engagement in international events serve the purpose of understanding those investment flows and some of the policy initiatives that impact them, meeting with those investors where they live and where they eat and sleep every night, and always presenting and promoting the investment opportunities that Trinidad and Tobago has to offer and where we can be competitive in closing and bringing those persons to Trinidad and Tobago.
I like the fact that when you talk about outward investment flow, but you also talk about policy investment, looking at what it is drives some of those investments. Because a question that I want to ask is that, is there anything that you say makes you a little skeptical about trying to have an investment flow from certain places? I know that a former Bajan Prime Minister would say that we want to be friends of all, satellites of none. So what are some of those things that make that guide the process?
Well, again, understanding the investors' decision-making criteria for why those investment flows are happening, right? And so which is why exactly it's important that when we go to these events that we understand what our competitive advantages are, and we're aligning those areas to where those investment flows happen and the decision-making criteria they use. And so when we are having a conversation with somebody, it's because we have an understanding that there is a meeting of the minds and there's an opportunity for business to happen in a way that we're both very comfortable with. Yes. And so where we find that happening, even cross-sectorally, is where Trinidad and Tobago is used as a platform, leveraging its infrastructure, leveraging its cost of business, leveraging its business continuity, leveraging its telecom, and leveraging, most importantly, the technical skill of its labor pool to provide goods and services to international markets. Yeah. And so we see that happening across manufacturing. Of course, we're a major manufacturing hub already in the English-speaking Caribbean, which is where we have a major advantage. We see that happening in the BPO and in the IT services sector. Many of our regional counterparts already advanced in this area, and we are greenfield and unsaturated. So we feel that there's a proposition there for those that are looking for a second and third location. And of course, we're all seeing it across the agro-tech space, particularly, and the renewable energy spaces. And those two spaces, particularly in this last little while, is where we see there's a lot of investor interest and a lot of an appetite for looking for solving issues like climate change and food security.
And I'm glad you spoke about agro technology as well, because some people may say, is it that we have a competitive advantage? What are some of the things that might spark persons' interest? Because normally we hear talk, well, a lot of the time we're hearing talk about one of our neighbors right now versus Trinidad and Tobago with regard to agro technology.
So let's say that we have the business environment and the business drivers for bringing agro technology investment ready to the region and to Trinidad and Tobago. So when we look at even at a CARICOM level, that goal that's been now stated very publicly to reduce the food import bill by 25% by 2025. Of course, each island and each jurisdiction would have, download that into its own situation where it realizes that, one, from a food security standpoint, let's import less, let's produce more where we are, and whether that's in the entirety of CARICOM or Trinidad and Tobago itself. And two, the requirement for foreign exchange to import obviously drives that interest now in what can we produce in Trinidad and Tobago that we can substitute for what we currently import. And we would have seen the Berry Cove project in Tobago, where they're going to be using the greenhouse technology to grow strawberries, right? And that it immediately starts replacing having to import those strawberries. And then it's a supply chain play where you're now producing them not for the Trinidad and Tobago market alone and substituted that import, but also now using it as a base for exporting into CARICOM and into wider markets as well, for whom there's a business positive for them, because they're now getting it a lot closer to home. And so there's an economic reason driving it as well. So we think, and we're seeing that there's several plays to be made, not just in areas where we don't already grow that or we can't grow that given our climate, but certainly using technology to be able to produce more than we otherwise would be able to.
And I see we've spoken about where it is we've been promoting ourselves to geographically. Some of the sectors that we really want to market ourselves as being people that you would want to be, being a port of call. So you come check us for this. But one of the things that we cannot escape at this point in time is that we're still an oil and gas province. So in terms of promoting some of the things that we have here, for example, Phoenix Park Industrial Estate, what are some of the conversations around that?
Well, we're definitely an oil and gas province. And so what we're doing is leveraging the infrastructure we've been able to develop based on being a mature oil and gas province, and not moving away from it at all. So the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate is leveraging several things, right? It's proximity to the second major international port, which is Port of Point Lisas. Its proximity to the existing industrial estate of Point Lisas itself, and then bringing infrastructure on board to ensure that persons are able to get successful operations going. So you add the proximity to the port, you now add the road and telecom and electricity infrastructure, add 5G onto that as well. And so you have where Internet of Things is impacting specifically the sectors of manufacturing and logistics. And then, of course, you have the relationship between the Republic of China, People's Republic of China, and the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the basis of the Belt and Road, being a Belt and Road signatory and promoting that park in a key geography, Dike, as you said, which is China. And the benefit there being the nearshore manufacturing play, and really giving Chinese manufacturers the opportunity to leverage the existing CARICOM trade agreements to use Trinidad and Tobago's, or leverage Trinidad and Tobago's infrastructure and its labor pool to assemble the items that they currently manufacture in China and assemble them closer to the markets that they serve, of the US, of Canada, and of Latin America. And so we've already seen success with Summit Luggage in that regard, and we've spoken, and that's been public, that they're going to be manufacturing luggage for the North American and Latin American market in Trinidad and Tobago as a nearshore manufacturing play. On the back of that, we have another company looking at doing sanitary napkins for the Central American region. And most recently in the China Latin American Caribbean Conference and roadshow / promotional activities that we just did in the Jiangsu province of China, we're looking at persons in the business of shoe manufacturing, construction equipment manufacturing, and machinery assembly as well. And so they're all looking at, why am I importing my raw materials from Latin America all the way back to China and manufacturing them in China to ship them back to Latin America and the US, when there's this base with a mature infrastructure, with a brand new industrial park, up-to-date infrastructure that I can leverage to get to those markets, cutting out all those transportation costs. And I can be more effective in those markets, as well as leverage trade agreements to get duty-free into those markets as well.
And you say that and you have my mind racing, because I didn't realize all of that was taking place. So thank you for that information. But this also reminds me of a cousin of mine who lives and works now in Canada. But one of the things that he does is he creates dies, those machines that would make parts. And even like thinking about when you're getting your raw materials and you're carrying them way over so to manufacture them, to bring them back almost where you got them, and whether or not that is something that we can have further conversations with in terms of like MIC and those who are dealing with manufacturing in Trinidad and Tobago, and you also build capacity as opposed to just cogs in a system. So we're able to even like take ideas and move forward with them as opposed to just kind of follow those instructions and continue to make what is being instructed. But, and this also, I'm wondering though, how enthusiastic are you about the Chinese investors that you're looking at, especially looking at the fact that there's the 16th annual China, Latin American, Caribbean Business Summit in Beijing, which is basically on the horizon?
Well, that's just past, Dike. So we'd have attended the that conference in October of last month, just around mid-October in Beijing. And this is where much of Latin America and China get together every year or every other year or so. It's hosted in China, and then it's hosted in Latin America, and it goes back and forth. And it's the trade flows between China and Latin America significantly what I just described, right? Much of that raw material needed for the finished goods that the world consumes comes from Latin America. Now, of course, there are finished goods that are exported to China as well, but it is primarily those raw materials that go to China, and China being the manufacturing hub of the world, if you want to, then exporting those across the region. And so it's really a supply chain play with Trinidad and Tobago says, and the other Latin American countries are getting involved. Mexico is seeing a ton of nearshore manufacturing investment, as well as a platform. Obviously, there's the North American Free Trade Agreement, and they are connected to North America road-wise. But certainly there is a play for Trinidad and Tobago also being a nearshore location. And again, leveraging that infrastructure. We are experienced for many years in producing finished goods in the downstream energy sector and beyond that are exported globally. And China understands and recognizes this. And so once they understand what Trinidad and Tobago is and who we are, and the infrastructure we offer, and the industrial estate that we are promoting with a very strong and very sound diplomatic relationship between both places, they immediately see the opportunity. And then, of course, we engage them on their more specific due diligence going forward towards getting them set up on the park.
One of the things I like speaking with you, Mr. Alleyne, I get more excited about Trinidad and Tobago. But we take a short break, we return with more. We are speaking with President of InvesTT, Sekou Alleyne. Stay with us, we return with more. Welcome back. We are finding out a great deal of things that we should be excited about. We're speaking with InvesTT President Sekou Alleyne, and there was also a panel that that you took part in, I believe. That's the panel discussion, Talking Business Green Economy. What was that like?
Well, actually, it was two panels across two conferences with a very similar topic, and the first was in the UNCTAD Investment Forum in the UAE in Abu Dhabi, and really what we're talking about is investment as it relates to the climate change challenge that we're having. So we talked earlier, Dike, about shipping that raw material from Latin America to China and then the finished good back into Latin America. Think about the climate change impact. Think about the carbon impact of that, right? And so Trinidad and Tobago's location as a nearshore manufacturing facility in of itself addresses that issue. But beyond that, of course, we're talking renewables. We're talking the ability to generate energy from renewable sources. And we're talking about a supply chain of being a destination for manufacturing those renewables. And so a lot of what we talked about, of course, is solar energy, wind energy, which, again, talking about investment in outflows, the world in the next 5 and 10 years is going to see significant amount of investment going into renewables. Trinidad and Tobago is already on that road with the Lighthouse BP project, that is to generate 100 megawatts in 2 locations in Trinidad and Tobago using solar power. And there's more to be done with respect to solar and wind as well. And so we'd have been able to speak to on those panels our relationship with national energy that is along the trail of ensuring that we hit our goals in terms of producing renewables and producing energy through renewables and maintaining our positioning as an energy producer, but moving into renewables through solar and wind, but also, again, the ability to leverage Trinidad and Tobago as a destination for manufacturing those or assembling those panels in the first instance, and other components that go into the solar, so that persons then that are purchasing solar panels in this region are getting them right from Trinidad and Tobago, as opposed to getting them from typical market sources like China and otherwise. And so there is a supply chain play that Trinidad and Tobago can speak to. There is the renewables that we would want to generate. I believe 30% of the grid power by 2030 is the goal. And with 100 megawatts coming on stream, there's the ability to get to 500 megawatts using more solar and more wind. And then there's a green hydrogen play, given that we already have a large burgeoning petrochemical sector, and the green hydrogen play allowing us to lower the carbon footprint of that sector while continuing to export those products globally. And so there's all aspects of that the renewable energy investment flows that will be coming into the region that Trinidad and Tobago can position itself to accept and to successfully expand on.
It's one thing to prepare in terms of leveraging on things that are existing, but sometimes when you have things that have been existing in a certain manner for a period of time, there are also mindsets that are entrenched with it. So how much of the work has been going out and saying, okay, well, you can come in, but how much has been focused inwards in terms of saying, this is what we have, people. Let us not bar the possibility for going outside, or we have this so we can offer it. So don't just look at this finite space as your market. How much of the narrative like that is worked on, so that people are saying, okay, well, yes, my market doesn't need to be here. I can get someone from there, and they realize that people are looking for these sorts of opportunities to leverage as this keyword in this conversation.
Right. Well, listen, the market itself is recognizing that on its own without InvesTT. And I think in our conversations with local business persons, manufacturers, even MSMEs, sorry, are recognizing that the globe is really their marketplace, and that some of these major flows in the renewables, particularly in technology, that are happening, suggests that Trinidad and Tobago alone as a market is just not going to be scalable enough for you to achieve profitability. And of course, what I'm doing right now is spreading that message internally, where with every one of these interviews, persons contact me and say, well, Sekou, we didn't even know all of this was happening. The luggage manufacturer, the sanitary napkin manufacturer, the fact that many of these manufacturers and others that are coming in are actually looking for joint venture partners. So they're understanding that there's a significant manufacturing hub here already, and working with stakeholders very closely, like the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association and the TT Chamber, to connect them into persons locally that they may already be a part of their supply chains. So you see local manufacturers that are importing a particular component and now thinking, well, wait, I may be able to assemble that component here in a joint venture with the person that I'm actually purchasing it from. And that reduces my foreign exchange requirement, but that also gives me access to an export market that I did not have, or a business that I wasn't even in prior. And so we see that conversation and that dialogue moving in both directions, so that those who understand how global investment flows and how global supply chains are working see the opportunity both locally for the local manufacturer and the small businesses, as well as for the foreign person that is looking at expanding their footprint as well.
And how do individuals get more information? And I say that because you spoke about feminine hygiene materials being made. There may be a company or an organization, one coming to mind is Feminine, that deals with period poverty, that might want to reach out, because this group coming in might want to make overtures to say, okay, well, yes, we are about the people and about the market, so want to make a sort of venture like that where they're holding hands and people say, yes, I like what you're doing, let me support by actually purchasing this product. How do people find out more about what is happening? All this good news isn't kept under the bushel, and so we know what InvesTT is involved in and how we can look forward to things that are coming.
Well, listen, there's always a website, which is investt.co.tt. There is the incoming email, info@investt.co.tt, and there's a real person that has KPIs behind that email that will respond and copy everyone in, so we will respond with alacrity. And persons can contact me directly, sekou.alleyne@investt.co.tt. And we are ready and willing and have a team that's looking forward to having these conversations. Look, we chase investment targets every year, both from an FDI perspective, foreign direct investment, and local direct investment. So we are always actively seeking projects, investors, both local and foreign, as well as investment spaces. So Dike, we also have a call for real estate out right now, live in the newspapers, as well as on social media, that are looking for local providers of commercial real estate, office space, land space, to connect investors to. So even internally, we find persons who are not aware of the opportunities to lease space for various projects. And we have a significant amount of foreign investors that may say, I'm looking for 10 hectares of land on the East Coast to do processing of a particular product. And we can then connect them to somebody that we may not right now be aware of that has that land that's perfectly placed to do so. What we also have is persons that are reaching out to us, particularly with the burgeoning call center sector, and saying, hey, I have this office space in Central Trinidad that is underutilized or not utilized at all. And I've seen that you guys have done a deal with Teleperformance and Icor and some of these other companies that are coming in, and let them know, please let them know that this space is available. So again, investt.co.tt, info@investt.co.tt, Sekou, Sekou.Alleyne, Alleyne, @investt.co.tt. We look forward to and await your communication.
And we want to thank you very much, President Alleyne, Sekou Alleyne, President of InvesTT, for all this information. I think I'll need to go back and look at it again to get some of the information, because sometimes it registers better the second time. But thank you for the work that you have been doing and continue to do. This is the entire group of InvesTT. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.